Hi friends. I wanted to make a quick video addressing the question of whether or not a teacher should quit in the middle of the year or quit teaching forever. So I have been here many times. As a matter of fact, I almost quit my teaching job within the first few months this year. Just to tell you a little bit about what was going on in my life, I had switched to a brand new school district, of course, a brand new school, brand new grade level. And on top of that, I decided to go back to graduate school to get a different degree than teaching. So I was doing all of this at once and I was completely and totally overwhelmed. I literally felt like I was unraveling. I could not sleep through the night. I would wake up with racing thoughts. I would cry a lot. I just felt buried with work and overwhelmed. And I just really started to think, I don't think I can make it through this school year. I was at the point of the school year around October, November, where I didn't even know if I could make it through Thanksgiving break and Christmas. And it was super bad. I also had another teaching experience that was an absolute nightmare that I seriously think gave me teaching PTSD. I'll make a video about that later, but it was one of the worst years of my life, and that was another year that I almost quit teaching right in the middle of the year. So I just want to let you know if you're in that place. There's so many of us that really understand where you're coming from, even though it might not feel like a safe place to talk about these issues at your actual job, or maybe you don't have any teacher friends that you can get that real with. But I just want to let you know that you are not alone. So many of us teachers in the daily trenches are battling that stress, even sometimes serious depression and anxiety. I even remember dreaming about teaching at night, more like nightmares of teaching every single night. So it can really get like that. And I think that that is something that people that are not in the teaching profession just don't understand. They watch sweet teacher movies of, teachers with sweet little kids on the rug reading storybooks, and they think, man, what an easy job. But it's not until you actually become a teacher that you understand what would drive teachers to quit and why teachers really are quitting in mass numbers. So anyhow, I just want to offer a little bit of empathy and understanding here, but I also want to let you know what decision process I made to help me decide whether or not to quit, not just teaching forever, but whether I should quit teaching in the middle of the year. Now, spoiler alert, I am still teaching. I decided to stay this year, and I actually ended up quitting grad school instead. And let me just get into kind of my thought process. So with that said, of course, again, no job is worth your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health. If you feel like you are at the end of your rope, by all means, do not feel guilt for quitting. But I want to ask you some questions just to see if there's some other strategies you can use to push through the rest of the school year. So I'm sure you're not taking the decision to quit lightly. I don't think anyone does, especially in a job like teaching. So let's just kind of think about some questions that we can ask. So I want you to think about, is there any chance things will get better within the next few weeks, within the next couple of months? I found that for teachers, certain seasons are outrageously stressful. The beginning of the year is super stressful. Any kind of testing season, whether it's district testing or benchmark testing or county testing, of course, standardized testing, those seasons are super stressful. And then it just seems like randomly with teaching, there's just random spurts where there's all of these observations that you're having to go through and, having meetings with artifacts and proving that you're a good teacher and all of that jazz. So thank goodness, normally those come in chunks, super overwhelming chunks, but normally they're over in about 2 weeks. So I went through a ton of those at the start of the school year. Parent-teacher conferences is another one. But I got through it and things sort of calmed down a little bit after that point. So ask yourself, you know what, can I push through enough? Can I push through even 2 more weeks and see if things get any better? A lot of times I found too with drama, I would say parent drama, student drama, coworker drama, a lot of times those kind of things do tend to die out in a couple of weeks. Maybe you're getting called into the office, maybe your kids, I don't know, are being obnoxious toward each other. But typically that thing is not sustained day to day throughout an entire school year. It kind of ebbs and flows. So kind of ask yourself, you know what, if I wait a couple of more weeks, if I wait another month, is it possible that things will calm down a little bit? If it is, maybe you can just take it on a month to month basis. You can tell yourself, you know what, I can quit at the end of this month or in the next 2 weeks if things don't get better. Just kind of tell yourself that and let yourself know that you do have options. But at the same time, I don't think anyone really, really wants to quit unless it's truly an emergency in their life. So see if things will change in a couple of weeks. Another real question for real life is, will quitting actually make my life worse? So I think a lot of times when we're in a miserable situation, like a miserable job situation, that's all we can think about. And that's all that's in our head. And we cannot get out of that mindset. But a lot of times it's kind of hard to think, okay, if I actually quit, will I start finding that I have no money to pay bills? Do I have any like children or parents that I'm taking care of or a spouse that I'm taking care of? Will all of those problems start to equal out to about the same amount of problems I was having at my job? So just really ask yourself, is there any consequences that would come as a result of quitting that actually might end up being equal to or worse than the problems that you're having at your job? For me, I realized that I don't think I'd have enough money actually to sustain quitting teaching right now. And then on top of that, I have a parent that has lost their job recently and they're the sole breadwinner for the family. And as a teacher, I've been able to have enough money to help out my parents. So I kind of thought to myself, you know what, I want to be able to help my parents out. I want to be able to help my family. So it doesn't look like quitting right now is a realistic option for me. So just kind of ask yourself that, hey, if you're young, if you're still living at home, if you've got like a roommate situation where the bills are covered, maybe it's not even a big deal. But for a lot of us, the reality is we can't just quit our job overnight. We kind of have to have a plan in place. Another thing that I would encourage you to ask yourself is, are there any mindset shifts that you can make within yourself that would make teaching easier? I'm going to confess to you one of mine. It probably sounds not that great, but it's just the truth. What I told myself is I am going to give myself the goal of being a 70% teacher. In my world, below 70 is failing, but 70 is just barely passing. And I literally had to tell myself with every lesson plan, every observation, every thing that I had to do as a teacher, can I give it my 70% effort? Can I make it good enough for it to pass and let that be enough? Because especially last semester, I was just so overwhelmed and bombarded by grad school and being in a new district and a lot of expectations with this new school district that I had never experienced, and I thought they were just outrageous. And I literally thought to myself, even without grad school, if I were to do every single thing that this school district wanted, I would never have time off and I would never have a break. And since I was doing that on top of grad school, that's how I was living my life, just Monday through Sunday, morning through evening, doing some kind of work, thinking about work, and it was completely overwhelming and it was truly impossible for anybody to do. So I told myself, you know what, in order to make it through and not literally quit, I'm going to have to become a 70% teacher. And I kind of really thought about it. Would my school rather their teacher quit in the middle of the year and have a long-term substitute for the rest of the year? Or would they rather their teacher stay and do a passable amount of work? I'm not suggesting at all that you go to work and sit and read magazines, plan your lessons, do your thing, but don't give yourself Pinterest standards. Don't give yourself don't compare yourself to a veteran teacher that's been teaching, 97 years and can teach in their sleep. Just do what you can do in a way that's healthy for you. And sometimes if you can get this to work for you, making that mindset shift, it's hard to say that, mindset shift, and bringing the standards down a little bit will help you at least make it through the rest of the school year. And I would say at the same time, lower your expectations for everything that comes along with the school environment. Give your students a 70% expectation. Give the parents of the students a 70% expectation. Give your administrators a 70% expectation. Just meaning, don't expect it to be the best, happiest job. It's not Disneyland. Don't expect it to maybe fulfill your deepest dreams and longings and desires. Just kind of give yourself the mindset, you know what, this is a job. I'm going to come in. I'm going to meet the requirements in a way that is healthy for me. I'm not going to expect too much out of the students, out of the school. And you know what? Sometimes you might find when you take that pressure off yourself, you might end up actually doing better work. I know that that's the case for me. When I have my expectation at a 90% for myself, I get so paralyzed and want to just procrastinate and never think it's good enough. But when I take that expectation down, my work actually goes up. So it's just kind of a little mindset hack that may or may not work for you. Another thing that I would challenge you to ask yourself is, what is the worst that would happen if I just go ahead and finish the year? Because a lot of times when you're wanting to quit, it's really because of a fear of something. Maybe you're afraid of bad evaluations. Maybe you're afraid of students treating you disrespectfully. Maybe you're afraid of crazy parents coming after you and making your life miserable. I've literally had all the things happen that I just mentioned. It's really a lot of fear that's creating a ton of anxiety, and that's making you absolutely dread going to work. So kind of ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? Will kids make fun of me? Will the principal come in when I'm not doing a good job and give me an evaluation of a 2 out of 10 and say I'm terrible? Will some parent cause drama and gossip about me on Facebook for the rest of the school year? And then ask yourself, if that happens, will I be okay? Can I survive that? Yeah, most of the time you can. Most of the time you can survive students being rude, a bad principal evaluation, drama, moms or dads at school or at the PTA. You can survive that. You really can, mostly. Now, if you're in another situation where you're in a mental health situation where a little bit of that will just throw you over the edge, then by all means, go back to the start of the video. I'm not talking about that. If you're in a mental health crisis, that's another situation altogether. But normally, if you're not in a mental health crisis, you can withstand some of the silliness and the drama and the ridiculous things that go along with teaching. And you can just kind of tell yourself, again, with that mindset shift, that, you know what? I'm going to be a 70% teacher. I'm going to lower my expectations for the people around me and for the school. I'm going to do my best. And if people are going to be rude to me or make fun of me or gossip about me, so be it. I'm getting my paycheck and I'm going to be done at the end of the school year. Just tell yourself that. And then a lot of times you'll see maybe things don't go as bad as you're fearing. Maybe that principal evaluation actually goes okay. Maybe you're not a 2, maybe you're a 5 or a 6. Maybe the drama moms on Facebook kind of stop and they leave you alone. Maybe you and the kids develop a better relationship over time and things are just fine. A lot of times, time does make things better. Not always. If you're in an ultra toxic situation, that may not apply to you. But I would say the average teaching experience, a lot of times you can just kind of push through and at least make it to the end of the school year. Okay. Another question that I would have you consider for teaching, and this is more of a should I quit teaching altogether question, but is there another grade level or another school or another population of kids that would be better for you? I have taught 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And let me tell you, the differences between those grade levels are night and day. I am teaching 5th grade this year for the first time. And the difference between them and 6th graders, I taught 6th graders for the last 3 years, is just night and day. In many ways, they are more pleasant to deal with than the 6th graders, for me at least. And it's really cut back on a lot of the problems and a lot of the things that made me miserable teaching for the last 3 years. So sometime you can just tell yourself, let me get through this year and see if I can find another job next year teaching a different grade level, or sometime even teaching in a different population, sometime teaching in a different type of school. I've taught in charter, public, and private. And again, the differences are night and day between those atmospheres. Even the difference between 2 public schools that are within miles of each other can be radically different. So ask yourself, is it teaching that I hate, or is it this, climate, this atmosphere, this age level, this particular group of kids? Those are honest questions to ask yourself, because a lot of teachers find that teaching one grade is miserable, but teaching another is delightful. So just another little thing to keep in mind. So let me just give you a few tips that has really, really helped me out. I would say the first tip is the hardest tip, and that is to not make teaching your identity. Now, when things are going bad at work, it can make you feel bad about yourself all the way around. You can just feel like less than as a person. And that's super sad. So, you know, if you've got to get yourself some motivational audiobooks or find some motivational YouTube videos and listen to them every single day, you just constantly have to remind yourself, you know what, even if I'm not doing amazing, even if I'm not that 95% teacher, then that's okay. There's other things that you're good at and you're worth more as a person than whatever your principal says about you, or whatever the PTA drama moms say about you, or whatever the cranky kids say about you. You're so much more than your performance as a teacher. And that is just so important to remember. And I would also encourage you too, with that being said, don't spend all your time on teaching. No matter how far behind you think you are, you need to find some interest, some things that you enjoy. You need to separate who you are as a person from your role as a teacher and feel that person, not just your teacher self. Another thing that I would really advise you to do is to make a weighted pro-con list. Now, everybody's pretty much familiar with the old school pro-con list, you know, pros on the left, cons on the right, and just make the list, and whichever is the longest wins. But I don't think that that really works out very well, because basically certain pros and cons have a much bigger weight. And when this year I made my weighted pro-con list, I realized that, you know what, even though about 10 problems would disappear in my life if I quit teaching tomorrow, there would be a few really big things that would totally outweigh any cons. So for example, what I said earlier, not having enough money, not being able to help my parents when they're in a time of crisis. And for me personally, I'm not saying that this is true for everyone. With these particular group of kids that I have, I really do care about them, and I really would feel horrible leaving them. Now, again, I'm not trying to guilt and shame you. There was a few times, a few patches where I just felt like my mental health was slipping. And at that point, it's like, you know what? I might have to quit. But I was able to get over those patches. And for me, after that, I realized that a lot of what I was dealing with in terms of teaching were annoyances that I could kind of push through. And I really didn't want to just leave the kids. So that was another massive one. So what do I mean by a weighted pro-con list? Basically, what you do is every single item on your pro or con side gets a score of between 1 and 5. And you can decide which way you want to start, but for ease of numbers here, we'll say that, you know, 5 is something that's super important, and 1 is something that is, you know, just kind of a minor issue. So you could have, let's say, I don't know, 10 things on the con list, but maybe they're all 1-pointers, but you could have 3 things on the pro list and they're all 5-pointers. So really the pro side might win out, even though it's got only 3 things versus 10 things. Hopefully that made some kind of sense. If it didn't, you can just Google weighted pro-con list. So I would advise you to do that. A book that actually really kind of helped me out actually a lot this year was Do Over by John Acuff. I just popped it in. I got it from the library as an audiobook, and I would just listen to it driving around town. And he says so many things way better than I could. But the thing that really stuck out to me about what he said is just the importance of not burning bridges, and just kind of taking a step back and not making rash decisions. So I would really recommend, if you have time, to really check out his materials. I thought they were awesome. A silly tip that, you know, I've definitely utilized is using up my off days. Every single year of teaching, I have used all 10 of my off days. If you need to space it out and just say, okay, I'm going to do 1 a month, and that's going to be like my spa day, or if you're really in a rough patch and you just need to take them back to back, who cares? Take off 5 days if you need to and use up those days before you just decide to up and quit. And then sometimes just really taking a step back and getting a break can be enough to kind of recharge you and help you press through. I would say to try to set a slightly far off quit date to really see if things get better for you. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but see if you feel like you're going to quit tomorrow, set the quit date for 2 weeks away and say, I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm quitting until the next 2 weeks. Or if you don't feel like it's like a crisis or an emergency, maybe set your quit date for the next holiday, or, you know, I don't know, the next month, and just see if you can push through. And that's sort of what I did. I kept telling myself this year, okay, if I really need to quit, you know, I'm going to do it, but I can wait till Thanksgiving break. And then I got through Thanksgiving break, and then I kind of felt that way again after Thanksgiving break. And I told myself, if I can get through Christmas, and at that time I went ahead and just decided to quit grad school. So since I did that, the load has gotten a lot more bearable. So see if you can push it off a little bit, just so you don't make a huge decision that you regret. Let's see here. Back to the beginning of the video, I mentioned if you're having mental or physical health issues, that's a serious red flag. I would recommend as soon as possible getting to the doctor and getting some documentation over it. So if you do feel like the health strain on you is too big, that you have documentation from a doctor, and a lot of times, at least for public school districts, you could get charged like $5,000 to break that contract. But if you have documentation that's showing what you've been going through from a doctor, then a lot of times they will not charge you that $5,000 to break the contract if it's in the middle of the year or if you don't get to fulfill your contract. So just a little note of something that you can do if you're really struggling. And I would say something else, an odd tip that helped me, is just searching job listings for fun. You can apply for other jobs for fun. You can interview at other jobs for fun. And sometimes just having the idea that you could do something else, it doesn't make any sense why this would work. But for me, it did. I just thought, well, I could do something else if I wanted to, but I'm choosing to stay here for these various reasons. Versus if you feel trapped at a job, that's when it's likely that you'll start panicking and freaking out. So just in a way, kind of keep your mental options open about what's out there, and you may actually end up seeing that there are no jobs that you would want, or maybe there's no jobs that could pay the bills for you. And that can kind of help you decide, do I seriously want to quit, or can I kind of push through this again? And then last but not least, I would say really talk to some trusted friends and family members and ask them what they think. Kind of maybe, if you really trust them, show them your weighted pro-con list. If you have any kind of spiritual advisors or a therapist or a counselor, just lots of mentors to help you make the decision, especially if you're a first or a second year teacher, because I'm pretty sure every first or second year teacher definitely wants to quit. But a lot of the ones that do end up pushing through, really, they find that things get better after the first 2 years of teaching. So I know that that was a lot, but I hope that it helped you, and just know that there are so many people that are in the same boat as you. And I would also, as a bonus tip that I just thought of, there's a ton of Facebook groups out there and teacher YouTubers and different support communities that you can just Google and look for and talk to other teachers. You can talk to me, you can comment below, you can email me. If you just need some support and encouragement, a lot of times that really makes the load bearable. So just know that I'm praying for you, whatever situation you're in. I know how stressful and how really earth-shattering teaching can feel sometimes. So we're in the trenches with you, and I'm cheering you on, and I hope that you make a decision that you're happy with. All right, have a great day. Bye-bye.